Water levels are the bane of a gamer's existence. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 20 annoying water levels in video games. Starting off at number 20, it's Call of Duty's Ghosts Into the Deep. Ghosts is sort of the black sheep of the Call of Duty franchise for a lot of reasons, so I guess we shouldn't be surprised that it's the one game in the series that has a full underwater level. Sure, a few games have underwater sections, but this section of the game is a full-blown underwater mission with combat and everything. It's still a Call of Duty game, so in comparison to everything else on this list, the mission goes relatively smoothly, but there's still some annoying stuff in there. Your weapons are, for one, way weaker, you move way slower, and yeah, guess what? They're sharks. They can and will eat you, and it sucks when they do. I mean, at least you don't have to worry about oxygen, but it's overall a pretty frustrating mission. And number 19 is Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, the forbidden underground waterway. Bloodstained is pretty much just a new version of Castlevania Symphony of the Night, but one place it decided to innovate was the water sections. In Symphony, you get an item where you can just walk through water and it's easy. With Bloodstained, you have to get a power-up that you can use to propel yourself through water, I guess. Awkwardly. Like, really awkwardly. And that's what makes this place annoying. Just the way you have to move through the water. You're basically pushing yourself around like a human-shaped lunar ladder, and it never really feels quite right. It is bouncing all over the place, and it looks ridiculous. Castlevania had this stuff figured out. You didn't need to mix stuff up like this, so it's not an improvement. At number 18 is Sakura, the underwater section of the Fountainhead Palace. You don't unlock the ability to swim underwater in Sakura until very late in the game, which is good, because that means you don't have to do it a whole lot, but they give you this one big area where you're forced to swim, and it can be a huge pain. The underwater area is huge, for one. It's filled with ghosts who can snipe you with projectiles at long range, and then there's this giant, enormous carp. It's called the Great Colored Carp, and if it finds you, it eats you. You might be a badass ninja, but you are no match for a carp. This whole area is a real pain to navigate, and on top of that, there's a headless you can fight down here too. If you thought these guys were bad on land, well, I mean, actually they're a little easier underwater, but they're super annoying. They just suck to fight, period, and underwater moving around isn't great. So while it's a little easier, it's also a little more annoying in my opinion. The whole part's a huge pain, but at least it's the only major underwater section in the game. At number 17, it's Metroid Prime 2 Echoes with the underwater section of Torvus Bog. Torvus Bog sounds just as miserable as it is. It's probably the least liked area in the entire Metroid Prime series, and it's not hard to understand why. I mean, look at it. It basically makes you want to take a nap. The regular part of this place is bad enough, but the underwater sections are worse. They're murky as hell, hard to navigate, and just really annoying. What makes it particularly bad is that you have to go through this place before you get the suit upgrade that makes it easier to move underwater. So the game basically forces you to trudge through these interminable water sections as slowly as possible before giving you an upgrade so that you can get around at a reasonable speed. Basically, Torvus Bog is a drag normally, so these underwater sections only make a bad thing worse. At number 16 is Star Fox 64's Aquas. The R-Wing sits back while you hop into the Blue Marine, a sub built without any lights to cut through the deep ocean. The result is a murky, sloppy, and predictably difficult level in a game otherwise known for free-flying fun. Nintendo returned to this area in 2006 Star Fox Command, but they left the Blue Marine docked at home, maybe to install proper equipment for some kind of future debut. This game is considered a classic for a reason. It's still fun to go back and play today, but there's one level that kind of drags the whole thing down, and it's Aquas. It's the one level where you use a submarine, and while it's not terrible, the sub just isn't as fun as the other vehicles. Everything's just slower and less exciting in this level. It's dark, pretty difficult. The pace of it is... it will kill you inside. The rest of Star Fox 64 is this energetic soundtrack, and this level goes for a kind of more atmospheric type of thing too. I don't know why, because it's a shooter game and you kind of expect the soundtrack to keep you fairly hyped to continue playing the game, but nope. It's like Enya or Vangelis. This is pretty much the level that most Star Fox players dread when going back to play this otherwise phenomenal game. At number 15 is Alice Madness Returns, The Diluted Depths. It is a level that just doesn't end. Probably the biggest criticism leveled against this game is the length of its levels. They are way too long. And I don't know if The Diluted Depths is actually the longest level in the game, but it sure feels like it is. It just keeps going and going and going, and it's the same thing pretty much the whole time. It's not even a real underwater level. The whole thing does take place under level, but your movement's pretty much the same. Still, no other level in this game felt as endlessly long as this one. And it's not just long, it's boring. You're just doing the exact same platforming over and over with almost nothing introduced that mixes anything up. In a game where every level goes on for about 50% too long, this is probably the worst of them. And number 14 is Sonic 2 and Sonic Mania, that one part of Chemical Plant Zone. Basically, any water section in a Sonic game can be absolutely terrifying because of the drowning music. It is the worst thing. It's massively stress-inducing, and what is a genuinely fun and easygoing game like Sonic can quickly turn into a major emotional stressor. You got Labyrinth Zone, you got Aquatic Ruin, these places can be real stressful. Probably the worst part in the entire series, though, is that one part in Chemical Plant Zone. If you're a Sonic game fan, you know what I'm talking about, where the slowly rotating blocks that you need to platform onto to get up above the water. It sounds easy, but it's really not. And you might think Sonic veterans can get through this part no problem, but it can still be a frustrating experience for people who've been playing it for the entire time the series has existed, because one wrong move and you're either falling, you don't have enough time to get up to the air, or you're crushed between the two blocks. And honestly, most of the time I can get through them all right, but you make a little slip and this becomes incredibly frustrating. And number 13 is Super Mario 64's Dire Dire Docks. Nobody likes Dire Dire Docks in Super Mario 64. Probably the hands down the worst level in the game. For one thing, you have to go through it if you want to beat the game. The pathway to Bowser's stage is behind it, so they force you to play it at least once. But the level, itself is basic as hell. You start in this underwater tube, there's a long boring tunnel that leads to the actual dock. It's all way too big, it takes forever to swim through, and every time you start the level, it forces you to swim all the way to the docks where most of the stairs actually are. It's just empty and dull and doesn't have a lot going on. There's harder levels in Mario 64, but this one, I dread going through this one more. And number 12 is Tomb Raider, level 7, entitled 40 Fathoms. The original Tomb Raider games can be difficult to go back to these days. They do not have good controls by modern standards, the levels are huge, they're often pretty confusing to navigate too, which is especially true for 40 Fathoms, the big underwater level in Tomb Raider 2. It's gigantic, it's so easy to get lost in, and it just keeps going. The painfully short draw distance compared with the messed up PlayStation textures make things harder to navigate. In a lot of ways, Tomb Raider 2 is a big step up from the first game, but this level can be rough, even by the standards of the early series. And number 11 is Dark Souls 2, The Shrine of Amana. Not exactly a traditional water level, but annoying as hell. What makes the Shrine of Amana different from a lot of other waist-high water areas in Dark Souls is that instead of simply poisoning you and leaving it at that, this place hides instant death pits in the water too. Where you can actually stand isn't always obvious, and the game intentionally tries to bait you into traps by filling this place with annoying long-range enemies that force close-range players to run through the area and inevitably fall into the nearly impossible to see deep water spots that of course mean instant death. Whole thing's just miserable, and it's long. It's got a ton of enemies that make it difficult to just try and dash through, so there's a little you can do, but take the whole thing slowly. You will get sniped by the wizards though, so you end up running and falling into the water by mistake. It's just lose-lose the whole time, and it's brutal. At number 10 is Donkey Kong Country 3's Poisonous Pipeline. We've mentioned Donkey Kong Country underwater levels in our previous list, but this level makes every other water level in the series look easy. The gimmick for this one's killer. Anytime you're underwater, your controls are reversed. This one little thing turns what would already be a pretty tough level into one of the most frustrating experiences out there. Underwater control in these games is already a little tricky, so just straight up reversing the controls sucks. It's especially frustrating when the game forces you to switch between the reverse and the normal controls, because when you jump outside the water, the control scheme goes back to normal, so by the time you're used to the reverse controls, the game forces you to switch them up again. It's not literally the hardest thing out there, but it is incredibly annoying. And the worst thing is that this is a last level before the boss. An annoying underwater gimmick level is what they've got for the big finale. Like, no wonder people don't like this game as much as the other Donkey Kong Country games. At least the music's still good though. And number 9 is Earthworm Jim Down the Tubes. Earthworm Jim's a weird ass game, but oddly enough, this level is one of the more normal ones in the game. It's an underwater based kind of level, which is pretty standard as far as video games go, but the way they make up for the lack of weirdness compared to the rest of the game is to make it really, really annoying. The main thing we're talking about here is the submarine section. For one, the controls are awkward and running into walls damages the sub, and you're on a time limit the whole time, which, it's gonna take some practice to get through this part without dying or running out of time, or just finding the secret shortcut, which is basically required to save your sanity. Rest of the level, not so bad, but the submarine part is really bad. At number 8 is Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, the Water Temple. What is there really to say about the Water Temple in this game? It's long, it's easy to get lost in, and it's confusing. That's the main issue people have with it, just figuring out where you're supposed to go at a certain point. It's so easy to get turned around or have the water level be wrong or miss a door because the place is just a confusing layout. On top of all that, at least in the Nintendo 64 version, you're forced to constantly go in your inventory and equip and unequip the steel boots that let you sink instead of float. It's super annoying, especially if you're stuck running around in circles and can't figure out what to do. It's still Legend of Zelda, so it's still a great game, but the Water Temple really sucks. And number 7 is Devil May Cry 1's Mission 12, Ghost Ship. It's a gimmick that never came back in the series, thankfully, underwater first-person combat. Yes, there's a short section in the middle of the game where you have to swim around this sunken ship with a harpoon gun and shoot enemies, and it is as awkward and pointless as it looks. And this isn't a game where people want to slowly swim around a shipwreck. Like, DMC is about crazy action, and that's what we're all there for. It's such a weird section that it's easy to forget it's even there. Like, just one look at this, it has us asking why. At number 6 is Kingdom Hearts 2's Atlantica. It's the part with the singing. No, it's not a real water level because you never really do anything underwater in the level. It's pretty much entirely just you watching cutscenes and doing these basic rhythm games. But it's basically like really embarrassing, like pure unfiltered cringe. The new songs are just straight up bad, and while the voice actors try their best, it just doesn't work at all. And because they're quote unquote interactive, you can't just skip them either. At number 5 is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, the underwater part on planet Manan. There's not really a lot to say here. Knights of the Old Republic tried to add a few new wrinkles to the BioWare formula, and not everything was great. Case in point, this section where you're underwater on Manan, it's boring, incredibly slow, and there's not much to it. The only thing you can do while underwater is slowly move around, and that's it. It's basically just getting from point A to point B. It's slow, it's annoying, and it's not actually that long, but it feels endless. There's really just nothing redeeming about any of it. Hopefully, the remake finds a way to rework this into anything that's actually entertaining to play, because this is not. At number 4 is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from the NES, the underwater dam level. This has ended like a million playthroughs of this game. Probably the most infamous water level for people of a certain age. And this stupid level just has this irreparable psychic damage that is done to an entire generation. It's the level where you had to swim around underwater and disable these bombs. You're on a time limit, and it's not completely linear, so it's easy to screw up. You throw in this annoying electric coral all over the place, and you gotta run into some problems. Say this whole thing's frustrating would be an understatement. Everything up to this point in the game's fairly easy, and then you get here, and it's where most kids give up. It's got all the hallmarks of frustrating game design, underwater controls, the time limit, and damaging stuff all over the place. The level's infamous for a reason, because it's bad. And number 3 is Echo the Dolphin, Welcome to the Machine. The whole thing, like all of Echo, is an annoying water level, but somehow they found a way to make it worse in the final stretch. Welcome to the Machine is an auto-scrolling water level, and yes, there are dead ends that you can get stuck in. Pretty much the only way to get through this stage is to already know where to go, otherwise you're probably going to die, because they love to trick you into an unwinnable position, and somehow crush you with the scrolling screen. And yeah, for some reason the game ends with you taking on the ginger-esque aliens in a game called Echo the Dolphin. The sad thing, these aliens are least your worries. It's the level that'll kill you more than anything. And number 2 is Metal Gear Solid 2's underwater escort mission, the part where you have to swim Emma Emmerich through the flooded sections of the base. It's literally an underwater escort mission, and while the meme nature of that title makes it sound like the worst thing ever, it's only like pretty annoying. Swimming in first person in the game is already a pretty awkward proposition, so having to worry about yourself on top of your escort only makes things more annoying. There really aren't that many dangers, at least, but but the biggest concern is probably just running out of air. It's still slow, laborious, and not much fun though. And to make matters worse, she just gets killed soon after it anyways, so all your efforts to get her through here are basically pointless. And finally, number 1 is Duke Nukem Forever is Blowing the Dam. The penultimate boss in Duke Nukem Forever, the Energy Leech, easily falls under that one boss thanks to Duke's slow swimming speed. What more needs to be said about this one? The game is not great. It's mostly boring and slow and weirdly paced, and that's just all the more obvious in this level. It's the part where you're supposed to blow up the dam, but you get attacked by this monster called the Energy Leech. The entire fight's underwater, where you are slow, you're constantly running out of oxygen, your vision is blurry because the bad water effects, and you'll probably have these annoying red damage effects over everything as well, because this thing's attacks are almost impossible to avoid if you're not already in the right place. So basically, you're just constantly drowning and you can't see. And this is the big climax of the game right before the final boss. This frustrating slog of a section is how the game decides to wrap things up. An underwater escort mission, pretty bad, but an underwater boss fight in a first-person shooter, it doesn't get much worse than that. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is of course a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications, and as always, thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon, you can follow me on Twitter, Falcon Hero. We'll see you next time, right here on gameranx.